Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Holistic Hoedown. I'm Megan Bauer, and as always, joins me the splendiferous Reba Svetkov. And today we have a very special guest. Her name is Ashley Titus, and she is the host, founder, operator, editor, content creator for a wonderful sustainability podcast called Life on the Upcycle. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much. I feel like you gave me too many really nice titles there, so I appreciate that.
Well, when you're a hobby podcaster, you do it all. You're the marketer,
Mhm.
you're the editor, you do it all. And I wanted to give you credit because this is a lot of work, and I wanted to give you credit for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we brought you here today, Ashley, because we're entering into the holiday season. And well, I guess before we get there, what why sustainability? What brought you here to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is actually I have a degree in environmental management, and after getting my master's degree, I learned all of those big world problems. And then I walked away from it and had a 4-year career in the trenches of the environmental industry. And during that time, I had a son, which changed everything. And it was at that moment that I really started to think about the world in terms of like how he saw it. So I wanted to make sure that his carbon footprint, like right off the bat, was smaller than my own. And so started kind of like going down the path of cloth diapering and utilizing like glass baby bottles and all the things. And during that, just because of what I was changing, my friends and family started asking questions. And so it was at that point that I realized that number one, with my background, even a lot of those things weren't super easy to change, and a lot of those things weren't like common knowledge. I felt like common sense, and so I thought if I have a degree in this, like which like and I can't figure this out or I'm having to dig, then surely everyone else could maybe use a little bit more direction. And so I started a podcast to try to help busy women live more eco-friendly lifestyle, just by incorporating like everything, like every day-to-day things, um, to address some of those larger issues.
Awesome, awesome. And right now you're getting your PhD right now in environmental science or something?
Yeah, I'm working on my PhD in science education.
Wow. And what do you want to do with that
So I would
other than
like,
educate science?
yeah, educate science. I would like to teach at the college level, and then too, like I want to continue to do the podcast and maybe be a science communicator.
Awesome.
I love
Wow.
all of this. I'm so excited right now.
Oh,
Like
thank you.
I
Isn't she
am.
great? I met Ashley when we were fresh. When did you move to Marble Falls?
I moved in 8th grade.
8th grade. So yeah, wait, I don't remember. Anyway, we met in 8th grade, early high school, at Marble
Wow.
Falls High School in Marble Falls, Texas, and we've kept in touch all the years. And we just recently, in the past few years, reconnected. And I will say that Ashley started doing podcasting and had me on her podcast. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And then I met Reba, and I'm so excited. So you were the inspiration that made me want to do this. So I wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you are so sweet. Thank you. You came on, and it was amazing because like everything just flowed so perfectly. Like I
I love
remember
to talk.
turning off and being like, dang it, she's better at this than I am. Like it just
Oh
flows so
gosh.
naturally for her. How is that possible? So it's just a natural fit, definitely. I love
Well,
y'all's
thank
show.
you. Well,
But
oh,
I think
thank
I just
you.
want to shout out like that when you live your truth and when you do these things, you inspire people that you don't even know about, right? And that things down the road. So, oh God, that just makes me like, I'm like gonna start crying about it. But truly, like when we start living our truths and doing these things, that inspires other people to do those things. So, thank you, Ashley, for inspiring her.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Yep.
That makes my heart swell.
Oh, warm fuzzies.
I know. But I'm so excited to learn, like, from this. I'm like, I have so many questions at this point because from your background, then going into having a kid, which I do think shifts your mind state. It's like all of a sudden, it's not just about you where you're like, okay, I could live through these things. I can, it'll be fine. And then you're like, this little being now has to live through that. And I don't know if I can take thinking about them living through catastrophes or a different kind of world. And what does that mean for them? And then for their children, and then for their children's children, which are extensions of us. It changes the whole dynamic. So I love that you talking about when you have a child, that shift happened and you started with bottles. And then like, what was the next step? Like, I don't know, where do we start? Well, I guess what we really want to talk about is sustainability in the holidays, which is like high waste time, right? Like from decorations to presents to
Amazon boxes.
Amazon boxes. No, I mean, everyone, I feel like most people can like cover their eyes at this and feel a little bit ashamed, right? But I don't want to say ashamed but that feeling,
Guilt.
a little bit of like, hey, I could have maybe done a little bit different.
So we have you here to help us be better, help us do differently. And we're getting into the holidays, so now's the perfect time before we start spending lots of money and consuming lots of honestly cheap plastic crap. What can we
Mhm.
do different? How can we live a happier, more sustainable holiday?
Absolutely. So it's there's so many different things that you can do. And I know, Reba, you asked like where was I going next? And what really ended up going next were like the containers for my child's food. So like reusable snack bags, which I also used for when I was pumping at work. So actually I started using those first, like, the reusable snack bags.
Mhm.
There's a brand called Bumpkins. Um, I recently went to Target and looked at their selection of different bags and was like completely shocked and really angry when I left because I saw how expensive they are. And
Mhm.
you mentioned Amazon. I feel like Amazon is like, man, I have a love-hate relationship with
Yes.
Amazon
Yes.
because there are options on Amazon that I do utilize for like laundry detergent and some of like the cleaners that I use for the brush that I use for my dishes and things like that. And then the snack bags and things like that and containers that a lot of times are better options and are cheaper options and last longer. There is an option on Amazon, though I don't know if you've noticed it recently, where you can get like one package per
Yes.
week. So
Yes.
instead of getting like
Mhm.
10 packages, you can just get one. Um, so that's awesome. Um, as far as holidays, so if you the holiday that's closest to us, just literally like just 2 weeks away, right, is Halloween. And what I try to do is I try to think of like how can I, number one, I'm busy, um,
Mhm.
and as I know you both are, and then number two, like, so how can I do things that are like easy to do that duplicate for multiple holidays. And so, is that really loud? I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
We like
Hey,
dogs. We're good.
everyone, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
hello,
I'm sorry.
doggies.
So, one year for Thanksgiving, I had everyone over and I utilized like all of those small pumpkins, the sugar pumpkins that you can get at the grocery store. I seriously bought 20. And you can buy those right now for Halloween and you can put them strategically like all over your house. I had like would bunch them 2 and 3 for decoration, put some of them like in the fireplace. You can put a few outside, but it's really better to try to keep them inside because what you can then do is then going into Thanksgiving, you can either redecorate them or, and then going into Christmas, you can cook them. So I ended up cooking all of those. I ended up roasting those. I used the seeds, and everything on a pumpkin is edible. There are certain pumpkins that are better for certain things, like the Cinderella pumpkins. The larger, like those really cool, different looking pumpkins are actually
Mhm.
really good to eat. Those taste good. And so like the harder, smaller pumpkins, those are good for soups. You don't want a soft pumpkin for soup. And then also too, I know the Libby's, the canned pumpkins, they used the Dickinson brand. So you can use this for decor and then later on roast those, freeze, and then Megan, have you ever done that?
We always get a big pumpkin for the kids and we make it a jack-o'-lantern and I make the pumpkin seeds, but then it goes out on our front porch and it rots.
But
Which is
still,
perfectly okay. You can
yeah.
compost it.
Well,
Yeah, that's a
exactly.
good
It's
idea.
compostable. And I think that's where it goes into decorations where I'm like, okay, can this break down naturally? And will it break down? Because if you get plastic pumpkins, okay, that might last year to year, but guaranteed you're not going to want them for more than 3 years, probably. You're going to
Right.
be like, oh, well, there's this other cute one or whatever. But at least that pumpkin you put outside is going to compost. I mean, sometimes though, like I'll have like my mom has had them put Sharpies on them and I'm like, "Oh, just maybe like let's not put chemicals on them so that we can compost it." But there's a lot of creative ways I think to still and or even gathering like grasses from outside and like using those inside instead of buying them plastic at like Michael's or at whatever Hobby Lobby.
Huh.
Um like use nature to decorate,
Absolutely. One year,
right?
what we did was we pressed leaves
Yes.
and then painted them gold and then glued the like paper mache, like painted the pumpkin white and then paper mache the gold leaves onto the pumpkin. And it seriously was a centerpiece that I could use all the way up until Christmas because it was
Yes.
gorgeous and it lasted until Christmas. Now, I wouldn't eat that one because of the paint,
Right.
but you could use that one pumpkin for 2 holidays, right? Like you could paint your jack-o'-lantern on it and then cover it over with white and then have like this beautiful centerpiece for Thanksgiving. Or you can carve out your pumpkins and use those as vases. There's so many different options.
Oh, I like that one. I've never thought of them as vases. That would be so
Mm-hmm.
fun.
I've always wanted to put food in a pumpkin. I know you guys have probably seen
Like a
the
watermelon one?
Halloween. It was on Pinterest. It's been on Pinterest for years, but it's like a jack-o'-lantern that is in the throes of
Throwing
throwing
up?
up,
Yes.
and it's throwing up like the dip that's in it. And I'm like, gross, but I love that idea.
That's
You're like, yes, I will do
hilarious.
that.
Okay, so that also gave me another idea though. So the inner, like the guts of a pumpkin, when you clean that out, you can use that to make vegetable broth.
Oh,
What?
Yes.
So the
Yeah.
stuff that holds the seeds in, you can use that to
hmm
make. Oh man, I didn't even.
Yeah, you can use that to make vegetable broth. So like literally and this could actually go for the holidays too. Like so any scraps from vegetables that you use, so like the tops of peppers, like honestly like all of the pieces of the onions, even sometimes like the roots and whatnot, I freeze all of that and then make a huge batch of vegetable broth. And my husband raves about it.
I love.
that's
I
exciting.
oh well, look at I must be sustainable because I do the same thing. Like I cut off even my carrot peels. As long as I feel like as long as you wash your vegetables, right?
Mm-hmm.
The tops, all of it before you start cutting. I use carrot peels, the tops of carrots, the ribs of kale because you can't really eat those. I use all, and I put it. I have like my whole freezer is full of just huge freezer bags full of vegetable ends and odds that then yeah I just use a big stock pot with a bunch of water and some salt, boom, done.
Okay, I need to now do that. That's something I don't do. But I have a question. Because when I freeze things, I've been just using plastic bags, like Ziploc bags or whatever. Like, are there reusable bags that you've used and it's worked well to put in the freezer? Sorry to put you on the spot,
Yes,
but I'm
there's
just wondering.
there's like silicone ones that you can use. I've also used like the large glass containers, but I'm gonna be honest too. It's really hard to find sometimes salad mixes, and so I end up with those plastic salad
Mhm.
containers, and I've been using those too, and then I'll end up
Oh,
recycling them afterwards.
That's a
okay.
great idea because we buy that big thing from our favorite grocery store down here that's totally regional and I won't say it. but I
We
get
all know what
like
you're talking about.
it's
Yes.
HEB. It's the best grocery store
Oh,
ever.
oh, actually, okay, I've never been in one. When I just went to Texas, I saw my first one. I was like, "Oh, that's that thing that everyone talks about," but I never
Okay,
went in.
when you come visit, I'm gonna take you. Like
It's amazing.
we had some people that they live in Lubbock and they don't even have them as far north. Do you have them up in Fort Worth, Dallas area yet?
Yes, but Lubbock just got like 2.
Yeah. And they came down to visit and they're like, "We just got an HEB and we don't get it." And I'm like, "Call me in 6 months. You'll get it." But anyway,
Okay,
we get
yeah.
these big, like 16, like I buy a thing of spinach, 16 ounces of spinach in that
Oh,
plastic container. And
you hit your thing. I don't know if that did anything to you,
can
but
you
keep
hear
going.
me?
I can now. You just cut out for a second.
Oh, I
Keep
didn't hit
going.
it though. Because I've been trying to keep my arms up here.
You're like, yes, your salad thing was very big,
Yes, the
and
salad thing. Um, what a great idea! And I just recycle that every week. I just throw it in the recycling bin, and I don't even give it two thoughts about what I can use that for. And I have like 5 bags of vegetable scraps that they would probably all fit in that one bin.
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that
absolutely.
being sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, and then you're not using those because the part that stinks about the recycle or about the plastic bags is that you only get like 1, maybe 2 uses out of them. And even like I'm even hesitant about washing them because the thing about plastics is that plastics don't actually ever break down. Are y'all aware of that? I don't know
Yes.
if y'all have ever talked about that on the show.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so plastics. There's some stats out there that talk about how plastics break down in 400 years and whatnot. Actually, that's not true from everything that I've seen. Plastics never break down, and it's because they just get into tinier and tinier pieces. And something that's a little bit frightening, but is that so they come off like they go into if you wash them like some plastic that can go down the drain, and then it gets into our system. And they're starting to find actually microplastics in our stomach. They're finding them in the snow in the Swiss Alps where it's like completely remote. So they know that they're actually airborne. So we want to try to reduce plastics as much as possible. Not to scare anyone, but just to be
Yeah,
aware
so you know.
that, yeah, that just every little bit really truly helps.
Well, and
Wow.
even then, we're washing our clothes, and the microplastics are in our clothes, then are going back into the water, then into little fishies. Like it's like we're inundated with plastic everywhere, and I think that I wanted to bring this to like we probably I would like to try and be plastic free and do all those things, but we know that that may not be possible right now. So I guess that's a part of this is encouraging everyone to just do the first thing, right? Like buy a real pumpkin instead of a plastic one. Buy, like save your tops or whatever it is, like get some tall grasses and use those for decoration. Get a little bit creative and also not stuck into like, oh, it has to be this way. This is what I always got. This is whatever. But literally, our world, well, and that's a part of it. Our world depends on it, but really, humans depend on it. Like, our
Mhm.
earth will be here without us. But, like, if we want to do this for our children and for our own futures, like, we have to do things and we have to change. So, like, little things matter and they may not seem like they matter a ton, but they do. If everybody buys one pumpkin that's a real pumpkin, that's a huge shift.
Absolutely, because you think about supply and demand. So then that's less like plastic pumpkins. That means there's more at the store, so they're going to produce less next year, and that's why exactly like what you're talking about, Reba, is that if we buy from companies that are trying to do better, then they're just going to be able to continue to improve and improve and improve. So it's like you get to vote with your dollar, essentially.
Yes.
And those
Okay,
are the
so
votes that really count.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yes. Okay, so
So,
that was Halloween-ish.
Hmm. Yes. So, and then too, this is a little bit different. So, if you want to go on a different track, by all means, stop me. But what I really love about the holidays is I used to get a lot of anxiety about people coming over to my house because I felt like everything had to be perfect. But now I look at it as an opportunity to show people what we do on our daily basis, and show our family and our friends how they might be able to do things differently. So you don't really we don't want to push our agenda on anyone, right? But you want to show people how easy some of those changes could be. And so it's such a great time. Like, I may or may not have books out for kids to read about, like recycling and things like that. And the Lorax might be on. I don't know. But you want to make it as easy as possible for your guests to be able to participate in these things. So that might look like having an extra recycling bin in the guest room or bathroom, just so they're making it easy for them. That might look like having a drying rack on your kitchen countertop, so that way you can wash your recyclables and show people that you're doing that. I don't know about y'all, but one thing that in the past, and honestly too, sometimes I'm still really guilty of, is that when people are like over and they visit, I try to make things like seamless, or I might eat things that I don't normally eat. But what ends up happening is I lose that opportunity to educate and show people better ways of doing things.
That is like so beautiful. I'm like,
Isn't she great? Isn't she awesome?
like, yes, like it, instead of thinking like, oh, I'm different, or oh, I'll just do this because everyone's coming over and this is what is expected. It's like an opportunity for growth and to show people, look, I buy these compostable plates, and actually they're kind of cool. They're the palm ones, like they're the palm leaf ones that are actually kind of cool. Or look at how they don't have to look weird, but they're compostable. And yes, they are a little bit more expensive for sure, but like, what is the true cost of if we don't do these things? And can we use real glasses, like actual glasses? And if one breaks, that does suck, but and you have to have a little bit more cleaning time. But is that can that be worth your time, and is it actually as big of a um, hardship as we make it?
Absolutely. And like, I don't know about y'all, but looking back at my childhood, like some of my fondest memories were actually cleaning up the kitchen with my family, right? Like someone would be washing the dishes at the sink and
Yes.
then someone would be drying. So like, I think it's just redirecting the way that we look at things, and also to remembering that time is a gift in itself. So even those times of drying dishes together, that in itself is a gift. And I love the way you mentioned that, is because like it's so important to be unapologetically yourself.
Mm. Yeah, because like you said, like you having a podcast inspired Megan to do her thing and showing her that it is possible. And I think that is the part where it's like, if you've been thinking about living or trying to be a little more sustainable, it's like buy those compostable plates and integrate them into your decoration, into your decor, right? Like you can still be creative, and it almost is even more fun to be creative, I feel like, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, "Ooh, how can I do this?" It, like, gives me a little, like, challenge. Like, how can I still live this? And then even just teaching people, like, "Okay, this thing is compostable and this goes here." Like, because we have in Denver, uh, you can sign up for them to do it as a city. We have a compost program, which is awesome. And then we can also compost in my backyard, not obviously those like cups and those kinds of things. But can you imagine how many like plastic paper plates that we have that are just like sitting in a landfill right now and will be
Forever.
Yeah.
forever?
No, definitely. Well, and two, even just to put it into perspective, like pumpkins. So every year, the United States throws 1 billion pounds of pumpkins into the landfill. And one of the things about the landfill is, you kind of already have alluded to this, is that things go in the landfill, they actually don't decompose properly because it doesn't heat up enough and there's not the right oxygen levels. So it actually turns into methane. And then, Megan, like as you know, that like we're losing those nutrients. Those aren't going
Yes.
back into the soils for our food, like for our future food. So like by
Right.
reusing that in other ways and composting, another really cool composting or way that you can compost is if you don't have a lot of space, or if you have a large dog that likes to get into things in the backyard, is you can do worm composting. Have y'all heard about that?
Uh-uh. Oh,
Yes, but I want to hear more.
Yeah, so you can there's kits out there that you can buy and they'll send you like the entire worm set. But basically you take large totes and it's two totes and then you draw holes in the top and in the bottom. So that way like the moisture and stuff can leach out. But you just like simply like once a week I go into the garage and I put my like food scraps on top, then like with a like a paper bag on top of that for the brown material, and then I just like spray it with a little bit of water, and the worms eat it and create what's the exact word for it? I think like word or worm castings, but it's
Mhm.
incredible for your plants in your garden.
huh.
Yeah. Well, and
Wow.
not only that, but we're losing topsoil and like essential um garden, like for us to actually eat as a civilization,
Mm-hmm.
we're losing the actual nutrients all the time. And because we're like digging up all this topsoil, we're losing a ton of nutrients and farmable land.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. So it takes 400 years for 1 inch of topsoil to be produced from parent material. 400 years.
Whoa.
And once 1 inch of topsoil is lost, a plant is 35% less productive. And so they're saying that in the future, what the next generations are going to face is not a quantity of food problem, it's a quality of food problem because things aren't going to be as nutrient dense as before.
I think that problem has already started.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
yeah.
there's this, you know, push to eat organic food and supplement your diet because we're not getting the nutrients from the food, to take supplements because we're not getting the nutrients from the food now that they did 50, 100 years ago. So that piece of celery juice isn't nearly as powerful as it was 50 years ago. And so that's why you see a lot of, obviously, supplement companies are trying to make money, so that's why they're pushing it. But I think I think that's already happening now, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. I agree. And I've seen stuff too about how the longer it takes for you to consume the food, the less nutrients it has, which Megan, I've heard you talk about that on the show about even when you juice something, what did you say? Like after 3 days,
Yeah.
you really should make new because it
Hmm.
loses nutrients. And so I think that's too a big reason why there's a big push for buying from like local food markets um, because you're getting that produce so much quicker. So the food is more nutrient dense.
Yeah. And
Well,
sustainably wise, that apple didn't have to use any gas to get to your mouth,
Absolutely. Or refrigeration.
right?
and
Mm-hmm.
also I think that goes into then um getting people information on gardening for themselves and using the areas that they do have, because it's like, oh, I went out and picked a cucumber today, and that I think a lot of people actually find gardening I don't know, that they can't do it for whatever reason, like they can't keep this thing alive, or oh, actually, Megan, why don't you go
Hi.
ahead and talk to this?
Hi.
Speak to
Um,
this.
I don't know what happened. My mint plant and my rosemary plant were doing awesome. And then they stopped doing awesome. I killed my third mint plant. Can you believe that? You can't kill mint. Mint is a weed, and I did it 3 times. 3 times.
I feel like a lot of the things that happen are overwatering, underwatering, and just not knowing the cues. And that sometimes can take a little bit of time and a little bit of practice, and being like, oh, it looks like like when the plant does this. And so I think it's a little bit more education with like how plants work. And because we're so separated from that, it's like, can we start to teach our kids and ourselves how to be farm from home, like we're not even having to go to the farmers market. We're just having to go, or even just have a little bit more of the food come from our backyard or from our patio, whatever it is. Just that
Absolutely.
offset.
I'm kind of like Megan. So I barely just started to be able to keep like houseplants alive. And so anything like herbs, like those beautiful indoor herb gardens that I see on Pinterest, like those I have tried so many times. And I don't know if my house like the temperatures are too random. I don't know. But I think another great way to support that though is supporting your local gardening club. So our local gardening club is having like a big sale in a couple of weeks. So I took them like all of those little black plant containers, from my house
Yeah.
plants. And I was like, here you go. You can use this for your sale. And it made me feel like I was helping to like the bigger gardening community.
Community.
Right. You're like,
Yeah.
I suck, but here you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you for
But
doing what
they're
you do.
yeah. Well, they even have those like those co-ops. Do you guys have
Mhm.
those in tech? Right? Like you can
Hmm.
buy from local co-ops, which I think are great. That's a great alternative too.
We have
Just
great
supporting those businesses.
farm shares down here. I
Yes.
can't remember
Uh-huh.
what that's not what they're called, but that's basically what it is. And you pay like a fee every week, and your groceries are delivered at the same time every week, or at the same you go to the same place. It's like a farm store in the city, but the farm is like outside the city. But your groceries are delivered to the store once a week. But you don't, I loved it because you don't know what you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to pick what you're gonna get. And I as a cook, I was like, oh, it's like chopped every week.
Yes.
And I get to be like, what am I gonna do with 5 pounds of kale? Or wow, that's 7 cabbages. What am I gonna do with 7 cabbages?
Borscht. We're making that
Bo-
tonight.
Oh, there we go. I've never had borscht, I don't think.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk about that later.
Yeah,
But
for
I
sure.
want to know more about what do you have planned for your holidays, Ashley, and like what else are you thinking about? Like, how can we do a little switch up for our holidays to make it a little more sustainable?
Absolutely. So for Thanksgiving, my plan is actually to talk to my friend Megan about my menu. Um,
I was like, who, me?
You're like, what Megan
yes,
do you know?
she inspires me in all things, like as far as food goes. And my husband's like obsessed with her recipes. So that's where I will be going. As I'm just waiting for that blog to come out for Thanksgiving. So no pressure, Megan, but
It's coming. It's coming.
good. So we'll be doing that. Too, even food waste. I'm kind of obsessed with food waste because it's so easy for all of us to minimize. And so if you make a menu that maybe utilizes all of the food that you have, um, such a great way to do that. In our house, we do eat some meats, and so we'll make those things stretch and then utilize them in different recipes and things like that, which is another great way to show family, right, and friends of different ways to reduce their food waste. And then as far as the holidays, going into the holidays, so now is such a great time to start saving all of like your little glass jars, any ribbons that you get on things. So like if you buy new sheets and they have a ribbon around it, you can save that and use that for packaging. Um, there's so many different things. Butcher paper is really great if it's not doesn't have any oil or wax on it. Butcher paper is amazing. You can use that to wrap your Christmas gifts with, or you can use fabric. I am not going to lie, I save bags that people give me. I picked that up from a grandmother. Um,
Same, same.
perfect. And
And
then,
bows. I save Christmas bows.
oh my gosh. Okay. So during Christmas, we would all unwrap our gifts. And I kid you not, like my Nana would walk around with a bag and like
Yeah.
put all of the bows back in. And every year we got the same bows. So it looked beautiful around the Christmas tree, but it was perfect because we reused our bows every year. And that's what I grew up with. So that was the norm.
I'll never forget when I did that in front of my in-laws. And I was like, my mother-in-law was throwing bows in the trash. And I was like, no, 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 don't do that.
What are you
Give me
doing?
the bows. I got the weirdest looks. Like, okay, you can have the bows. I don't care. I'm like, yes, give me the bows.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and
awesome.
I love thinking about my sister-in-law actually, she is so good at design stuff, but wrapping with fabrics or wrapping with like with a scarf or something, then you give that gift as a scarf. You still get
Mhm.
that scarf as a gift. It's like a fabric wrapped present is so pretty to me. Like, and putting a little like the ribbon from my sheet box on there or whatever. Like those creative things make me so happy inside. And people do know, they actually give me the bags. They're like, oh, Rebecca wants them or Reba wants them, right? Like it's like they know I'm the bag lady and I will keep them and they will get them back. But It's like I haven't bought a bag in years. Like years.
I love that. Yes, yeah, I'm the same way. People like give me their old baby shower gift bags because they know that
Yes.
I'll actually reuse them. So I have a closet that is just dedicated to keeping like the paper, the tissue paper. I like refold that back up, and
Mm-hmm.
then
Me too.
some like the pretty wrapping paper that I won't buy myself because so if it's shiny or textured or laminated, then it's not recyclable. And so
Oh, good to know.
yes. So if it's like super pretty normally, then that's something that I end up keeping because a lot of times that's not recyclable, but I can reuse that in other ways. Um, Last year, what I started doing is keeping some of the Christmas cards that we got, and then you can cut the top off of it and reuse that next year. Like you could glue that on to a piece of cardstock, and that could be a new Christmas card or a decoration.
I love that idea. I love
Well,
that idea.
yeah, I think I looked up the stats on Christmas cards. It was like if everyone sent one less card, we could fill like a 4-story building full of paper or something, like just one less
Wow.
card, or you just don't send cards, or you think of something a little more creative. Because, like, can you imagine all the people that send cards? And that probably goes for bags or whatever else. It's like, can you reuse something? Can you repurpose something? Can you reuse it, or can you just not? Do you have to send it? Like, can you be a little creative on how you do connect with someone? Does it have to be that same way?
I don't have my life together enough to send Christmas cards. So I feel better after having this conversation that I'm being sustainable
You are.
in my mess of a life. So you're welcome, Earth.
No,
So
you're welcome. Earth doesn't give a fuck.
truth. Yeah,
Okay, that's
definitely.
fair.
Well, and one year, because I love, like, I'm not gonna lie, I love getting cards. We have like this really beautiful piece that someone made me, and it's like this long piece of twill, and it has the pins on it for the what are those? The cloth pins, you know, that you
Hmm.
hang
The
clothes
clothespin
outside.
things or
Yes,
Clothespins?
whatever.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Hmm.
Yes, clothespins. There we go. It has like beautiful clothespins and ribbons on it, so it's like a decoration that we hang the
Hmm.
cards on our mantle. Um, so I finally found there's a company called Paper Culture, and they use 100% post-consumable um, paper for to make the cards. Which post-consumable means that it was already paper before that, and so it's been completely recycled. And then for every order that someone places, they plant a tree.
Wow.
So, granted, the year that I did that, I totally did not have anything together, and I may or may not have sent those cards out like in July. But it was like 2020, so I figured of all the years to send out like Christmas in July Christmas
This
cards,
is the year.
this is the one. Yeah.
Lean into the COVID. Lean
And
into
there we go.
Hmm.
it.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that idea about Christmas cards. It's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and I am glad you brought it up because I love getting them. I don't send them, but I love getting them. And at the end of the year, I'm like, God, there's some of them are just beautiful, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't want to throw this away, but what else am I going to do with it? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could save it and it could be part of a decoration for next year. Um, or I mean, if you're going to send cards, the best thing is to try to have it printed on paper so that way it can at least be recycled.
Mhm. Yeah,
Awesome.
so I guess that moves me into like I want to know about gifts. Like we
Mhm.
tried one year to just do a green Christmas with my whole family, like my brothers, and it was like either it needs to be like a re-gift, like maybe something you already had at your house and you're like, "Oh, I know this person would like this," or it's something you make, it's something you got from like the Goodwill, a thrift, or all of those kind of things, like literally sustainable. And even for the kids we tried to do this, so it's like not a plastic toy. I don't even think we tried to do bot things, but if you couldn't, it was like at least get something that is made out of wood, which sometimes those things are like, well, they had to cut down a whole tree for this little toy thing. Like, I don't know.
I love those Melissa and Doug kids'
Yeah.
toys. They're wooden toys, but I look at them and I'm like, am I really doing myself or the planet any favors by playing with wooden? And then what is the paint they use? What kind of paint do they use? I don't know. I don't know the answers.
I
Ashley, do
know.
you?
I don't know the answers to that specifically, but I love that your family all leaned into that. That is so cool.
Yeah. I
That's
do think
awesome.
we're a family all about that kind of stuff. Like it does make it a little harder. You've got to be a little more creative, but you also have to be willing to be like, okay, I'm gonna get maybe something. Like my brother gave my kids his old like Nintendo console or something else, right? Like so it was like he wasn't using it anymore and maybe he would have sold it or whatever. But now my kids got it. So it wasn't totally like the worst thing ever, but it was a hand-me-down, which I think we should probably do more of. Like we don't have to have new things all the time.
Absolutely. So for my son, I've done like a lot of half price books. I'll get gifts. I love that concept. What is it? Like one thing that you want, one thing that
Yes.
you'll wear.
Yes.
Um, there's like
One
three or
thing
four
that you
things.
need. There's a cute little rhyme,
Yes.
and I don't know it.
Yes. I love that. Like, because the last thing that I want is my kid to think that, he's going to wake up on Christmas morning and there's going to be a huge pile. Actually, I've been trying to like slowly, he's already excited about Christmas. He legit has a Christmas list. And so I have been like trying to like slowly like, well, your Santa only brings one or two things, and then mommy and daddy bring you one or two things, like, to try to
Set
Right.
the
get him
expectation.
exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
set that expectation.
But
But
I think, yeah, the experience might be a bigger part of it. Is like you're waking up, you maybe have some like I don't know if it's cinnamon rolls or whatever, but it's the experience of there's something under the tree, and we maybe focus a little too much on the presents, like
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah.
absolutely, that's actually our family tradition is I make homemade cinnamon rolls. Yeah,
Look
I
at
love
you.
that. It's so much fun. That's like the only time of year that I'll do it because it takes so much time. But
I've heard of, sorry to interrupt, but I have to say it before I forget it. But I've heard of something, and I've wanted to do this with my own family, where you do homemade gifts and you make
Mhm.
one gift per person, but everybody has to make it. Like
Yes.
you can go out and buy things to make it, but you have to make it. And I love that idea because it's creative. It's usually in
Well,
nature
thoughtful.
sustainable. Yeah, it's thoughtful and it's usually by nature sustainable. You use popsicle sticks or
Yeah.
I don't know,
Well,
string.
I'll give you some examples actually what happened. Like my sister-in-law is really crafty. Like she'll sew her outfit in an afternoon and be like, I'm wearing this today. Like so she can just like knit and sew, and not everyone is obviously like that, but did that for a lot of people. But then like for my face wash, I get glass bottles, and they're like sprays. So I repurposed those and made them into sprays for her. And so she could do like a clearing one, and I put a bunch of essential oils in. So they were just like spray mists for her. Um, what else did we do? Or I give like kits I've got kombucha kits. So like my brother gave me that.
Cool.
There's there's a lot of cool things to get creative in that way of like, what could I give this person that I is from my heart and hopefully they would use? Because I think you get a little more thoughtful about what you then give. And we all might say, oh, well, I don't know how to make anything. But maybe you can try and get a little creative. Like maybe I can make a little book or a photo book, or which is probably laminated materials, but I'm just thinking outside the box.
no, I love that. Another thing too is you can give experiences. So you can
Yes.
give
Yes.
movie tickets or ice skating ring tickets or any of
Mhm.
those sort of things, concerts, all sorts of cool stuff.
Or like, hey, a day we did one with my niece where it was like a day with me. Her and I just went to the art museum. We went and got Chick-fil-A, and then because that's what she loves to eat and she doesn't eat a lot of things, but like we went to do that, and
Kids
it
love
was like
Chick-fil-A.
I got to be with I mean, I can't personally eat Chick-fil-A because they have soy and all their stuff, but um it was like I got to be with my niece, and how many times do I get to her and I just be one on one? It's not a lot. And that experience was probably more, I don't know, it was better than anything I could have given her. Um, because now she knows, oh, we have this memory together and all those things.
Right.
I love that. That's beautiful.
It
So
is.
I'm like, what other experiences are possible? Like, what have you guys given experiences for your kids or your family?
Not yet. I want to. My kids are, I don't know. I need to think about it. I don't think I've done it yet though.
So we do for Christmas and birthday, we'll do the zoo passes and then museum passes for my son. So that way it's something that we can go do on weekends and things like that.
Yeah, or like my daughter was gonna she wanted to get her ears pierced. So it was like, okay, well, that's what your experience is. You're getting your ears pierced. Or I mean, I'm sure you could like get really creative with the experiences that you could do um, together. But I know that that's sometimes not as fun to wake up to and be like, oh, I'm going to the museum someday, you know? But my mom used to take us the day after Christmas to the zoo, and there was like nobody there. And the animals were so cool. And it was cold because I'm here in Denver, but we had a great time every time we did that. So
That's
it is
that's a
possible.
great idea for us down here in Texas because usually it's not all that cold. Well, down where I live, it's not all that cold around that time of year. It doesn't get cold until like January, February. So that's a great, and like my husband loves golf, so
Mm-hmm.
getting him like a free round of golf somewhere, not free, but getting, that's his experience, getting the golf for him.
Yeah, or maybe a golf place that's like maybe he's never gone to this course and whatever, right? Like maybe he goes with a friend or he stays overnight.
Yeah.
All those things.
I
I
love
love
these
that.
ideas. Keep them coming. Let's go.
Well, and then too, not to sidetrack too much, but I want to say the San Antonio Zoo will take your Christmas tree afterwards
Oh.
and they use it for their animals.
Oh, cool. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
And so a lot of cities too, for y'all and everyone who's listening, if you look up on your local city website, a lot of cities will, if you'll put your tree out on a certain date, they'll come and take it and compost it. Or
Mm-hmm.
not compost it, I'm sorry, mulch
Like
it.
mulch it, yeah.
Mulch it. And then you
Mhm.
can turn around and I know San Antonio, they'll do like free mulch weekends where
That's cool.
you can come to, we have different dumps based on what you're dumping in our city. So we have like the brush dump where you can, once a quarter, they'll come by and they'll clean up like all your yard clippings and your leaves, and then they'll turn around and mulch all that. And then same thing, I think like once a quarter you can go to that specific brush dump and you can get like a certain amount of free mulch. And technically it's mulch that you contributed to, which I think is a really cool idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Ashley, tell us more. Tell us more. What are you thinking about for the holidays?
Well, and for gardeners too, you can take your tree and you can start that like start one of those above ground garden beds or flower beds and use the base of the tree as like the fill. And then as it decomposes, it actually fertilizes the plants.
Like a
So
hugel culture?
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, look at you.
Like a what?
I'm a gardener.
What's it called?
Culture. I can't say it.
Hugel culture.
Yeah, but you put pieces of like wood or like these thick branches, and they help keep moisture in and nutrients. And so then it's like you can water your garden less. It's like a whole way of gardening that I actually would love to get into. We're revamping our garden right now. So it's I think it's a pretty old way of gardening.
It
Yeah, it's
sounds
really
very
popular in
German.
Europe.
I was
Hmm.
gonna say,
Yeah.
sounds very German.
I think it's, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this too. Do y'all watch the show Making It or
Mm-mm.
Made It? It's really funny. It's on Hulu and basically it's a craft show and it's a competition. And
Is that with
so
Ron Swanson and Amy Poehler?
yes,
Oh, I want to watch it
It'd be
just
so
because it's
funny.
those two.
it's so good. In the last season they did, um, uh, one of the women on there made the most beautiful mantle decoration. And she said that literally she does this in her house. And so she goes to Christmas tree lots and she asks for like all of the fallen branches. And they're like, yeah, please take those away so we don't have to pick them up. And then she basically like twines all of them together and creates like the most beautiful arrangement that like starts at the bottom and then goes all the way up and across. And so
Oh,
she does that
wow.
instead of a Christmas tree and she still gets that smell.
Okay,
Wow.
I need to now see this. Like,
Yes.
I need to look this
It's on
up.
the
Can we
latest
do a
season.
link? Okay.
Yeah, we need to try because it's incredible.
We have
Yeah,
a lot to.
I think that the creativity that comes from this can be not exhausting. It can be a little bit like, oh, this is fun.
Hmm. Yeah, like you said, like make it a family tradition.
Yeah.
Where you're getting everybody involved, which may or may not be stressful, but
Yeah.
it
Something
might be
that
fun.
that reminded me, I love that I'm like realizing I'm sustainable.
You're like, I'm really bad.
Okay, so
Then
I
you're
feel
like, oh
like
yeah.
that's how it is for me when I listen to y'all's show. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm a little bit more holistic than I realized.
That's
Yes.
you're our target audience. That's who we want to, hey, it's really easy to be holistic. We'll show you. And it sounds like so last year I wanted to make homemade Christmas ornaments. And my husband, I like to celebrate winter solstice. And my husband's like, okay, it's Christmas. But I went and collected and I got the kids involved. We just went for a walk in a local park and I tried to get little twigs that were mostly straight and about, uniform in size. So maybe 3 to 5 inches. And I made little star and hot glue with kitchen twine and I made little stars out of these twigs. And then I went to like Walmart and got like, okay, plastic little berries. And okay, never
You're
mind.
working on it. You're
We went
working
off the rails here. Anyway, I got my kids involved and we glued little stars and we hung these stars all over the tree and it looked so cute. And I kept them all and I would hang them all over my house. And so it was very like, Yule, very pagan, much to my husband's dismay. But I loved the way it looked. And I even added them to like wreaths that I'd bought years ago that were kind of looking a little worse for the wear. And I started gluing them to the wreaths. And all of a sudden I have a brand new wreath. And I was feeling myself last year. I felt really good about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of it too, how you're like, well, I did this, but oh, then I went to Walmart. Like every little bit matters and like just trying to get a little bit better. Like maybe next time you go and like forage a little, well, hopefully your kids wouldn't eat the berries and hopefully they're not poisonous, like those things. But
Well,
like you can do dried berries.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You can dehydrate cranberries
Oh,
Yeah.
there you
or
go.
Ooh.
citrus, and then it smells pretty.
Yes. I did the citrus one, the orange one, where I dehydrated the oranges, and it's so pretty as a garland. Like, oh my God, like blood oranges. I did that one last year where I was like,
Food
this
and
is, yes,
decorations.
you're in.
My favorite thing.
Yes.
Absolutely. What we did last year is I went a little bit crazy because it was after finals and I had been staying up till like 3 or 4 a.m. to study at night, when the house was quiet. And so for 2 weeks, I was stuck on that schedule. So I started binge watching Netflix and making snowflakes out of magazines that, like when you get magazines when they come in, like, I don't know, um, Harry and David or like James Avery, like all of those magazines that come to you and you're like, how did you find me?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
We all
Yes.
have those. We're like,
yes,
It's James
exactly.
Avery. I haven't bought anything from James Avery since high school, and they send me a catalog every year. I'm like, this is creeping me out.
Right. I know. Every time I move, I'm like, this is just impressive. Um, I'm not even creeped out anymore. This is just impressive. But so the way that I did step it up compared to what I normally did, I learned this actually from someone local, is instead of gluing, I started stapling. So that way, I later on I could recycle those things. I could just pull out the staples and recycle it. Um, but I hung up all of these beautiful snowflakes all over the house and then made kind of like a winter wonderland. It was actually my inspiration was Elf from the movie
Yes.
Elf, that night that he stays up all night long and got a full 45 minutes sleep. Um, that's what I like turned my entire living room and then my son's room into with the chains.
So the magazine ones worked really well because I am also a snowflake fanatic a little bit. So my mom is too, really. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm using paper that I don't really need to be using. So I'm curious, the magazine ones looked just as cute. And I was using tape, which is not recyclable for sure, to like connect to the ribbon. So maybe I can just try and keep some ribbon scraps or maybe use like a twine, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah,
as a
twine jet is a really good fabric or string to use because I think it's made from bamboo or something, right? Or hemp. And so,
mhm.
yeah, I know that jet's like one of the best strings that you can use.
And maybe even just trying to figure out how to tie it on instead of having anything. That may make it a little bit harder, but I think with a little creativity, it could happen. So I'm really curious what your snowflakes look like out of a magazine. I'm sure it was just kind of colorful-ish.
Yeah, I tried to use ones that were red and green and like with hints of orange and things like that. So they looked really pretty and colorful. And then for the living room, from like things I got from the mail, I kept some of those papers, and then some of the stuff from school. Um, I kept those things. So if you're in an office,
Cut
you
up
could just
that
use
old
some of those
test.
paper. I know, right? Yes. Well, and at the like where I'm at now, it's just pages and pages of readings, So it was like it felt good. I'm not gonna lie.
It's very cathartic, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I love that idea, and I think you touched on it. We like to make countdown chains for the boys where you cut strips of
Fun.
paper, we tape
Mhm.
them, but we tape them together. We do it for their birthdays because honestly, I get tired of every morning like, "Is it my birthday yet? I don't know. What does your chain say?" But I love that idea of using those same scraps of paper from magazines, red and green, and making little garlands to just hang around your house. I love that idea.
Yeah, it was
Well,
a
and
lot of fun and to keep it too. And I don't know if you
mhm,
do that, Reba, with your
I
snowflakes. You
do.
keep them for the
hmm
next year.
hmm Yeah, then I also don't have to make snowflakes again. And so then it gives me time to then make an orange garland or, like you just keep adding onto your stash.
I'm gonna make the orange garland this year. I love that idea.
Yeah. And I do think that I think sometimes it's like, well, I don't want to keep all those magazines around my house, but it's like create a spot or a tote or something where you're like, this is all the shit that I'm gonna try and repurpose. Like I literally have like a whole drawer, kind of like a cabinet where I just like stuff that stuff into because I will reuse it. Like I know this ribbon is beautiful, so put it in the freaking drawer, and it doesn't have to be this whole timely thing and you don't have to feel like it's clogging up your house. Like find a place for repurposed items because you will get creative and repurpose it.
And it's always fun to go back into that bin and look at what you've got and be like, "Oh, I forgot I
Mhm.
had that. That's pretty. I know exactly what I can do with that." I love that idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Absolutely. And then again, you can use those salad containers, right? To keep ribbons
Yes.
and things like that. We use like
Those
sometimes like the
salad
big pickle
containers.
jars.
Mm-hmm.
I love reusing jars. In fact, my husband thinks I have a jar addiction because I love mason jars. I used to do a lot of pickling, so I have a lot of mason jars left over from pickling. But then, like, my grandmother was born in like 1918, 1919. So she lived through the Depression. She remembers what it was like to have and she was a farmer. So they had nothing. And she would rinse out her styrofoam cups. She'd reuse plastic straws and yogurt cups. And I don't know where I was going with that. Shit.
Well, just always getting keeping all those glassware things because I'm like that pickle jar. I could reuse that for so many things. Like
Right.
that
Like
is Tupperware in itself. Like,
right. I can store, you can put spaghetti sauce in there, or you can store broken crayons in there because I don't like throwing away broken crayons, so they can, reuse it. I've
salt
used
scrubs,
Costco.
I
candles.
did that. Yeah, I did salt
Oh,
scrubs one year for like all of the people, like that. You know how you have to give gifts to like
Hmm.
all of the people who do things for you. So like the daycare workers
right,
and
right.
like
Hmm.
all of those incredible people that make my life easier. I did salt scrubs with like essential oils and
Yes.
lavender, and it was all from glass jars that I'd kept. And then I painted the top and then used those sheet ribbons or whatever ribbons I had gotten from other
Hmm.
people to make it fancy.
I love
Yeah.
that idea. I love that idea.
So
But
what
yeah,
else were
I
you going to say from Costco, Megan? Yeah.
oh, okay. I love as as a somewhat no, just a plant-based eater. I buy a lot of cashews and they're most cost effective from Costco because you can buy this huge container of Costco at Costco for like okay, maybe it's like 15 bucks, but it'll last you. I, take that label off and that's how I store like Nerf darts because Nerf darts they're fucking everywhere. And I'm so tired of it. But they have their little Costco container of Nerf darts and their little my son uses a lot of OT toys because he's got a little bit of a developmental delay. And a lot of these OT toys are, you know, fine motor skill type toys, so they're smaller. So I love repurposing those big Costco nut plastic jars. They have a great lid, and they have probably 5 of them in their rooms filled with various stuff. My son likes to collect rocks. I'm like, fine, go put it in the Costco jar.
Hmm. Well, I think that just again goes back to you don't have to do all these things at once. Like do one thing a year. Start one thing, maybe one little thing. I'm like, okay, I can make stars out of magazine or, snowflakes out of magazines this year. That sounds really fun and that's how I'm going to repurpose. Or I'm going to focus on presents this year or I'm going to focus on compostable plates or just using the dishes that I do have and washing them. Like choose one thing if it feels overwhelming to switch. But like that one thing will matter. And then you can start to add on and then you get a little bit better. And then you're like, oh, I'm getting a little better. You don't have to do all those things right away. That's the other piece of, I think, living a more holistic life, but also a more sustainable life. It's one thing at a time. Start
Right.
with one thing.
If it's
That's
driving you crazy, then then it's not sustainable. It's not if it's too hard, you're not going to do it. If it's too overwhelming, you're not going to do it. Just like detoxing. Nobody really wants to
Mm-hmm.
do a 7-day juice cleanse.
No.
But you might be able to have one juice a morning. And so I think being sustainable and being environmentally friendly in the holidays is but just like you said, just take one bite at a time. Even if it's a small bite, just take the bite.
absolutely. And you said, Reba, that it's like one of the big things. I would argue that's the biggest thing. That's you're absolutely right because if it's something that's too overwhelming, then you're going to end up throwing everything out, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessary. The food waste chef has a saying, and it's we don't need a million people doing everything, or we don't need a few people doing everything perfectly. We need a million people doing everything imperfectly. And so, if we do just what little bit we can, then that will lead to much greater results. And like you said too, like you're going to inspire people around you, even if you're not even trying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
And
love
that
that.
leads to big shifts and then teaching our kids to live differently. Like over time, that is a shift in a cultural, what is it, paradigm, right? Like this
Mhm.
is a paradigm shift and we're like living a different way and we've gone this way like real far like, oh, we're just plastic everything. Now we got to shift that paradigm.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been wonderful. We're coming up on an hour, and I feel like we could probably make this a 3-hour podcast episode. So, do you
Easily.
have any other awesome tips that you didn't get to share with us?
I think that's really it. Like looking over my list, and yeah, we covered everything. I think some of the big things are, start now saving up some of the bubble wraps and the
Hmm.
decor things. Start thinking ahead. Incorporate your family with some of those really cool changes that you can do, and enjoy it. That's an important part too. Like enjoy doing those things.
Yeah, because it's ultimately for you and your children and the people you love.
Absolutely.
Well, Ashley, we just want to thank you so much for coming on our show and gracing us with your environmental brilliance
Yes.
and
Don't give me way too
superstarness.
much credit. Thank you. Thank you so much for
No,
having me.
No,
no.
you're
This
getting
is
a
amazing.
PhD and you run a podcast and you're a mom. No, you're not getting enough credit if you ask me.
Thank you.
Yes. So
So
everyone
thank
go
you.
check her out.
Yes.
Check.
Ashley, tell us where all the peoples can find you.
Yeah, just on all the platforms. The podcast is called The Life on the Upcycle Podcast.
And you can find her on Instagram, and she's got
Yes.
a bumpin' Facebook group where she's always posting awesome tips from things that she's found, and the community that she's formed is really, like, you've really done a fantastic job at cultivating a great community, because they're always weighing in, like, oh, you just had one the other day where this woman goes to thrift stores and gets like all these ancient casserole dishes, like, the old Corel ones that have like the
Yeah, the
weird
Corningware.
the retro designs on them, and she just picks up a bunch of these casserole dishes for cheap, and then when she has to make food for a neighbor or somebody who has a baby, she just gets out one of those casserole dishes and gives it, and you don't have to have it back, and that way she's not buying those aluminum containers from the grocery store. And I thought, oh my god, I love that idea. That's brilliant. And it's all, that Facebook group is full of tips like that, not just from Ashley, but her fantastic community. So join her Facebook group, follow her on Instagram, listen to her podcast. She is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah,
And
the group on Facebook is called Love Earth Big, and it's a private group. And yeah, I can't take credit for much of that, because you're right. Like, the community in there is incredible. They just authentically share where they're at and all of the fun things that they find, and we have a ton of fun in there.
yeah, do. I'm very much like the stalker in the corner that's just sort of watching it all go down, but I enjoy it, and I get so many great tips. I don't have much to share, but I just really enjoy it. So join that. It's Love Earth Big, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay. So join the Facebook group, listen to her podcast. It's available on all podcast platforms, correct?
yes, I believe so.
Awesome. I
Thank
think
you
so.
so much.
Thank you for coming on our show, and happy holidays, everybody.
Yes, happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.